Hi everybody, my name is Abby and this is Sunny D Writes. Today's video is directed more towards our teen writers, and I'm talking to you today as one of you. I've been writing since I was 14 and I'm almost 19 now, so better said, dear us. Dear teen writers, let yourself be bad. Let yourself write that story that you know isn't going to be the one you publish, and let yourself take it in any direction you want. No matter how long you've been writing, if you're a teenager, there's a good chance that it's been not too long since you started taking your writing seriously. So keep in mind that you are still allowed to be bad, and you're still allowed to grow. Now is actually the time that we take to hone those skills. If you started writing in the 3rd grade, and now you're in high school wondering how to turn this series into your next bestseller, just take 1 second to think. Realistically, how many writers earn the title bestselling? And of those writers, how many of them wrote their book for the specific purpose of it being a best-selling novel? Almost none, I can guarantee you. Unless you're in the very top percentage of authors, writing isn't one of those jobs that's going to leave you swimming in it. Take it from someone who's done her research. And if you don't believe me, look to other more established authors on this platform, and they'll tell you the same thing. Writing is a passion. Making it to the best-selling list is obviously an added benefit, but definitely not the end game. So it's easy for us to get these huge visions of grandeur and just kind of run with them. I mean, who doesn't want to be on the New York Times best-selling list, right? But while we're training our craft, we also need to train our motivation. So what really motivates you to write? That's what you should be writing down. That's what you should be thinking of every time you sit down to work on your project. What are your goals? Take a second to write these down on a whiteboard or a post-it note, anywhere that you can easily see when you sit down to write. Maybe you just want to share your story with the world. Maybe you want to see your words in print. Maybe one day you want to be able to go to a library and see your name on the shelf. Whatever it is, write it down and post it up. Whenever you lose motivation to write, look at that list again and remind yourself why you're still working. Because let's be real, writing a book isn't easy if you want to do it well. The planning, the development, the writing, the editing, the feedback. Need I go on? You are going to put so much work into this book and probably into other books in the future. So remember that everybody else's progress is not indicative of yours. If someone finishes editing in half the time you did, please don't stress because their project isn't yours and vice versa. Basically, this video is me telling you everything I wish I had heard when I first started taking writing seriously. And there's a lot. You're going to hear a lot from me on this channel, and you're going to hear a lot from other writers in the future. There's a lot of writing advice out there. Some of it maybe isn't suited to your story, and some of it maybe isn't what you need to be hearing. Remember that experience does not mean authority. They're not the same. Granted, the advice of an author who's been published several times over will probably be more helpful than the advice of an author who's still working on their first story. But that doesn't mean that the author who's still working on their first doesn't have anything helpful to say. So when you hear writing advice and you're questioning whether to follow it, use your discretion. Just because it was posted with good intentions doesn't mean it's going to help you specifically. At the same time, learn to analyze what you read and what you hear. Before you decide to discard a piece of advice, make sure you're discarding it because it's not what you need, not what you don't want to hear. Read through it and take a second to make sure that it's something you genuinely think won't be able to help you. And take a second to think why it won't help you now, or how it might help you in the future. Most of the time, when authors give advice, they speak in statements or commands because a lot of the time that's just how advice works. But keep in mind that these are not the rules, just guidelines. And speaking of rules, it's important that you understand the rules of writing before you try to break them. It's like learning another language and trying to use the slang before you know how to say the days of the week. When you don't understand the language, you don't understand the proper context of the slang you've learned. But Abby, you may be asking, how does this apply to writing? Let me tell you. You need to understand the general rules of writing before you can break them for effect. For example, sometimes one-word sentences can add impact to the point that you're trying to make. If you want to add impact to the sentence, she was found dead in a pool of her own blood, you might write, she was found in a pool of her own blood, dead. But if you take this idea of breaking the rule and apply it too liberally and use one-word sentences only, you'll end up with something like blood, pool, dead, which is not the same. Honestly, it's kind of ridiculous. But if you don't understand the rule that you're breaking and just decide to go for it, this is a very real possibility. Maybe not to the extent that I just told you, but something along those lines. So remember that the first part of your experience as a writer is learning the rules, and once you understand them, then you can start to break them. And finally, my dear teen writers, experiment. There's so much out there for you to learn and try and write. Remember that a standard novel or novella isn't the only way to tell your story. You've got epistolary stories, short stories, build your own adventures, poetry, etc., etc., etc. There is so much for you to try, and now is the time for you to broaden your horizons by playing around with format and delivery. There's so much that goes into writing and figuring out what works for you, but it's fun. I mean, it should be fun, and you should be able to find the fun in writing. If writing is going to be a long-term pursuit for you, now is the time to make it truly enjoyable for yourself. That's about all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped any of my fellow teen writers out there. Side note, does anybody not quite like the sound of the word teen? Anyway, if you liked this video or if it helped you out, feel free to subscribe or drop a like on this video to let me know. And if you have any comments or follow-up questions, you can leave them in the comments below or over on my blog at Sunny D Writes. And until next time, happy writing!